experiences. Some of our experiences are similar, but a heck of a lot of them are different. If we're going to understand somebody, understand where they came from and what happened to them. That's how you start to connect with people. So let me start today. And I said this the last time we gathered, I'm going to say it again. There's something in the air.
There is.
There's something in the air.
There is.
You know, when a conservative Supreme Court strikes down discrimination against our LGBT brothers and sisters, there's something in the air. When that same court rules in favor of the Dreamers, there's something in the air. When the Mississippi legislature votes to take steps to remove the Confederate battle flag from the state flag, there's something in the air.
Right.
When the House of Representatives passes the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which bans chokeholds, bans no-knock warrants on drug cases, limits qualified immunity for police officers who use excessive force, when that bill has provisions for demilitarizing the police, I want my police to look like they're ready to police in Warrensburg, Missouri, not in Fallujah, Iraq. When this bill also requires body cams on all police officers, there is indeed something in the air.
That's
When the race-baiting provocateur in chief holds a rally in Tulsa on the weekend of Juneteenth, in the city where the largest massacre of black folks occurred in 1921, and the arena has 2/3 empty seats, there's something in the air. He's got a problem with size. And I don't know whether you're aware this morning, he was out this morning, obviously not at a service of his faith, but retweeting a video of a supporter yelling white power at black protesters, and then took it down. When LeBron James and Patrick Mahomes team up to fight voter suppression, there's something in the air.
That's right.
It's called zeitgeist. And that was a term that was thrown around in the 60s and 68. That zeitgeist, it is that feeling in the air. And there's a zeitgeist right now. You can feel it across this country. When 75% of the public in this country support protests about racial injustice, you know change is happening.
That's right.
And a change is going to come. If you listen to it there. It's going to come slowly, it's going to come surely, but it's going to come. George Floyd, knees on his throat in the streets of Minneapolis. 4 officers charged. Ahmaud Arbery, jogging on the roads in Georgia, killed. 3 killers indicted. Breonna Taylor, Louisville, shot in her sleep on a no-knock warrant at the wrong house. 1 officer fired. Since we met last time, Rashad Brooks in Atlanta, 2 shots to the back in a Wendy's parking lot. 1 officer charged. So change is happening, but the struggle continues. It ain't easy. Hannah Pfizer in Sedalia, 5 shots. 25-year-old, 140-pound young lady. No gun in the car. Don't know who the officer is. You know, I would say that the Highway Patrol is investigating that. I would right now call for an independent prosecutor to charge that case and not the county attorney in Pettis County.
Right.
And I don't know whether you saw it this week. The video just came out. Aurora, Colorado last summer. Elijah McClain, Aurora, Colorado. 140-pound young man with anemia, wearing a mask, walking down the street after he got his tea, and is stopped, he is tackled, he is cuffed, a knee on his neck, 14 minutes on the ground, begging for his life, saying, "I need water and I can't breathe," and then injected with a tranquilizer. Obscene. And so that's why the struggle goes on, because obviously people are still using excessive force. We saw it in D.C. in Lafayette Square. Attorney General Barr, the dog of the president, ordering the square cleared by federal troops and officers with no identification and using pepper spray and horses on demonstrators that were demonstrating peacefully. You know, when these acts of inhumanity continue, the rule of law can't breathe.
That's right.
When these acts of humanity continue, justice can't breathe.
That's right.
When this happens regularly to our brothers and sisters, none of us can breathe. This country can't breathe.
That's right.
And so the struggle continues. We're in this for the duration. We ain't going away. We ain't going anywhere. And Frederick Douglass told us that without struggle, there is not progress. So get ready to keep fighting, because we're going to keep struggling. Because, as we said the other day, this is not a moment, it's a movement. Woo! This is not a moment, it's a movement. Yeah. And so as we look out over this glorious, beautiful rainbow of humanity standing here today, I don't see any thugs. I don't see any anarchists. I don't see any terrorists. I don't see bad people. What I see is a multiracial, multi-generational coalition. And we ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. Woo! So get ready for the struggle, because you know what? This is what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Two of my relatives clapping in the back. And this democracy is worth fighting for. It's way past time to speak truth to power, to put our nation's moral compass pointing toward justice, to bring them down by their own motion, their own force. That's something Dr. King used. It was a concept of moral jujitsu. You bring your opponent down by their own motion and their own force, and you gain sympathy, and you create public opinion that starts to percolate, that creates change. So you don't want to let them pull you as low as they are. You don't need to go there. You take the high road. And the way to do this is to expose their actions with the great disinfectant of sunlight. You bring it out into the open. And thank God for body cams, because people would still be dead and people would still be lying and we wouldn't know the real story. So it's time to seize this moment, because, and listen carefully, power without truth is propaganda, and that's what we're getting. And power without accountability is tyranny, and we're going to stand up against it. And so it's time to call out systematic racism for what it is. Systematic racism.
Yes.
And let them tell, and they talk about bad apples. Let me tell you something. Bad apples, as they call them, don't fall far from the institutional tree. Bad apples, as they call them, don't fall far from the institutional tree. It's systematic. And so let's tell them now, with our voices raised, and we've said it before, you can't start the healing till you stop the bleeding.
Right.
And I think you already know this, but the powers that be always think they can win a war of attrition. They always think they can wait you out. They give lip service to the issues that's going on now. They slow walk change, and they wait out the storm. Well, I got a message for elected leaders, whether it's Mickey Hartzler, who is crickets right now, whether it's Josh Hawley or Roy Blunt. We're going to tell you loud and clear. This storm will not subside till the skies open up and justice rains out on this country from sea to shining sea. We ain't going to let anybody turn us around. We ain't going nowhere. We're in it for the duration. And as Dr. King told us, and this is our challenge, at this moment, every person must decide whether they will walk in the light of creative altruism or the darkness of destructive selfishness. And he says life's most persistent question is, what are you doing for others? not about us, it's about everybody else, about our brothers and sisters.
That's right. That's right.
We've got an obligation to them and to the larger community to do the right thing. You know, I grew up with heroes, and one of them was Jackie Robinson. Broke the color line in baseball in 1947. Probably wasn't the best ball player there was, Satchel Paige, other guys were. But Jackie had the right combination of athletic ability, of intellect, and emotional restraint. And he knew there was much more riding on his shoulders than just himself. That he was leading the path for others. And the first book I read was a Jackie Robinson story. It may have been maybe before The Little Train That Could. But he inspired me growing up back east in a multicultural, multiracial environment. I saw Jackie Robinson play when I was 6 years old. Other than my daughter, it's the greatest day of my life. Raise your hand, daughter. There she is. And he said this. Jackie told us this. A life is not important except for the impact it has on others. Think about it. A life is not important except for the impact it has on others. And, you know, years ago, I read about somebody that when they died, on their tombstone, they wrote this. If you want to know about me, don't look down, look around. Think about it. If you want to know about me, don't look down, look around. Look where I've been, the impact I made, the people I loved, the difference I made when I had a chance. And then ask yourself the question, did I try and make the world a better place wherever I went? I think that's the challenge of our humanity. And I take to heart what Jackie said. You know, Edward R. Murrow was the journalist that took on McCarthyism and brought McCarthy down with others, ruining people's lives. Propaganda, untruths. We're seeing a comeback, aren't we? We've got a president that channels Joe McCarthy with a little bit of George Wallace. But Murrow told us, our history will be what we make it. Our history will be what we make it. You make history every day in your personal interactions. Whether you know it or not, you are, every one of you here, role models. People are watching what you do and what you say. And with that in mind, how do you want to carry yourself? I think that tells us what the right path is, doesn't it? And so the question today is, which side of history do you want to be on at this moment? What did you do at this crucial time in our nation's history? What will you tell your kids and your grandkids that you did when this was all happening? That's a great, I think, great way to think about how to carry ourselves. Did we stand up for what we knew in our hearts was right? Because that's what it's about. You can tell those kids that at this time, above all other voices, I listened to my heart. Above all other voices, listen to your hearts. And you know what's right, and you know what's wrong. And you can tell them that you're making history today. You were making history 2 weeks ago when we marched. You make history again when we're out here in a week or two. So think about it. You make it every day. And you make history by standing together today for change. And change, as Sam Cooke says, is going to come. You know, back when I taught my students, 32 years at the university, I taught a 60s class. I taught value and differences that I developed after the Quiet Day riots. And I always had these kids tell me, I wish I would have grown up and been around in the 60s. And you know what I told them? I would tell them now, this is your 60s. Now, the 60s ain't a time, a moment in time. The 60s are about how people stood together to make peaceful, nonviolent change at that time. And that's what we got to do here now. Woo! So, it's time to rally. It'll be time again for us to march. It'll be coming soon. But we also, at the same time, we've got to organize, we've got to mobilize, and we got to vote. And on voting day or before, if you vote absentee, take somebody with you to the polls and bombard Vicky Hart's switchboard about about why she voted against the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Ask her what she's going to do when the reinstitution of the teeth in the 1965 Voting Rights Act comes before the House. Because in Shelby versus Holder, Shelby County, they took the enforcement clause out of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. States that had set up roadblocks to voting to disenfranchise voters. That is stripped. That's why you see polls being closed, a whole county having to vote in the same precinct, people being purged from voter rolls, quote, voter ID laws. They ain't going to win unless they can suppress the vote and engage in misinformation. So you need to get out and take people to the polls. And we need to tell Senator Blunt and Senator Hawley to take up and vote for the George Floyd Policing Act and to vote for putting the teeth back in the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Bombard their switchboards and have your friends do it. Make them uncomfortable. This ain't no time for business as usual. And so, I would say here, and you're doing it today, vote with your feet on the streets and on the courthouse lawn. Because the streets and this lawn are the classrooms of democracy. This is where it happens. This is grassroots democracy.
Yep.
And so, as the great Bob Marley told us, and you heard the song, it's time to get up and stand up. He says, for your rights. It's time to get up and stand up for racial justice. It's time to get up and stand up for the right to protest. It's time to get up and stand up for the right to vote without suppression, obstruction, or corruption. And it's time to get up and stand up for George Floyd. It's time to get up and stand up for Ahmaud Arbery. It's time to get up and stand up for Breonna Taylor. It's time to get up and stand up for Rashard Brooks. It's time to get up and stand up for Hannah Pfizer. And it's time to get up and stand up for Elijah McClain. And when we get up and stand up together, that's when change comes, because a change is going to come. So we'll keep you posted. Go to the Johnson Counties for Justice website, and we'll let you know when the next thing's coming down. I love you all. Love each other. Don't give up the fight.